Hello everyone, and welcome to my General Hospital official channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up.
The air in the small, tastefully decorated living room of the Quartermain gatehouse was thick enough to be cut with a knife. It was a stark contrast to the usual ambience of the space, which typically held the gentle warmth of a happy, if somewhat unconventional, family. Today, the very molecules seemed charged with a dreadful anticipation, a silent scream waiting to be vocalized. Willow Corinthos sat on the edge of the plush sofa, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles were a bloodless white. Across from her, settled into an armchair with a patient, concerned expression, was Drew Kane. The physical wounds from the shooting were healing, the bandages smaller, the wince less pronounced, but the psychological scar, the question of why, remained fresh and agonizingly open. For weeks, the specter of the shooter had loomed over all of them. The investigation had spun its wheels, pointing fingers at various enemies Drew had accumulated in his complicated life. There had been suspicions, dark whispers, but no concrete answers. And through it all, Willow had been the picture of supportive friendship, a constant, gentle presence offering comfort to Drew and a steadying hand to her husband, Michael. But the gentle facade was a dam, and the pressure behind it had become unbearable. Drew, Willow began, her voice a fragile thread of sound, barely audible over the hum of the central air conditioning. She cleared her throat, but it did little to add strength to her tone. There's something I have to tell you. Something I should have told you a long time ago. Drew leaned forward slightly, his kind eyes searching her face. He saw the pallor beneath her faint tan, the dark circles she could no longer conceal with makeup, the tremor in her lower lip. Willow, whatever it is, you can tell me. You know that. After everything we've been through, you, me, Michael, the kids, we're family. There's nothing you can't say. His kindness was a knife twist to her conscience. It was the very quality that made what she had done so monstrous, so unforgivable. She took a shaky breath, the air catching in her lungs like shards of glass. Family, she repeated the word, and it tasted like ash in her mouth. That's just it. It's all about family. And I did something terrible. Something that betrayed that family in the worst way imaginable. Drew's expression shifted from gentle concern to guarded alertness. He remained silent, giving her the space to continue, though a knot of dread began to tighten in his own stomach. He had faced corporate raiders, blackmailers, and terrorists, but the raw pain on Willow's face promised a different kind of threat altogether. The night you were shot, Willow said, her gaze dropping to her hands, unable to meet his eyes any longer. It was at the Metro Court. It was chaotic. People were screaming. I was so scared for Michael, for the kids. I had this gun. I didn't even know where I got it, it was just in my hand, a weight of cold, terrifying metal. She paused, swallowing hard against the bile rising in her throat. The memory was a vivid, technicolor nightmare she relived every time she closed her eyes. The flash of light, the deafening roar, the smell of cordite. I saw a figure, she whispered, her voice trembling violently now. A shadow moving in the panic. I was so sure it was someone coming to hurt us. To hurt my family. My finger was on the trigger, and I was so terrified, and I just squeezed. The confession hung in the air between them, stark and ugly. For a long moment, there was only silence. Drew stared at her, his brain struggling to process the words. They were simple words, but their meaning was seismic. The supportive friend, the gentle mother, the loving wife, she was the source of the bullet that had nearly ended his life. You, Drew finally managed, the single word laden with a confusion so profound it momentarily eclipsed any anger. Willow, it was you? Tears began to stream down Willow's face, hot and relentless. She finally forced herself to look at him, her eyes pleading for an understanding she knew she didn't deserve. It was an accident. I swear to you, Drew, it was a horrible, tragic accident. I never meant to hurt you. I would never, ever want to hurt you. You have to believe me. I was scared out of my mind, my instincts took over, and I made a split-second decision that was wrong, so terribly wrong. The dam had broken, and now the words poured out of her in a torrent of guilt and fear. I've been living in hell ever since. Every day, seeing you in pain, seeing Michael worry, knowing that I was the cause of it all, it's been eating me alive. I haven't slept. I can barely eat. The guilt is a physical pain, Drew, a constant ache that never goes away. Drew sat back in his chair, running a hand over his face. The revelation was a sucker punch, knocking the wind out of him. He thought of the long nights of pain, the fear, the frustration of a body that had betrayed him. He thought of the investigation, the suspicion that had fallen on innocent people. And all the while, Willow had been right there, lying with every comforting word, every sympathetic smile. An accident, he repeated, his voice low and carefully controlled. Willow, why didn't you say something? That night? The next day? Why let this charade go on for weeks? Why let the police chase their tails? Why let us all believe it was some targeted attack? This was the crux of it, the part of her confession that transformed a tragic mistake into a conscious, ongoing deception. Willow wrapped her arms around herself, as if trying to hold her breaking pieces together. Because of Michael, she cried, her voice cracking. And because of the children. Drew, if I came forward, if I confessed, I would go to jail. What would that do to Wiley? To Amelia? Their mother, a criminal? Their family torn apart all over again? Michael's career, his reputation, everything he's built at ELQ, it would all be tainted by this scandal. I couldn't do that to them. I couldn't destroy the very family I was trying to protect. The logic was twisted, born of panic and a mother's ferocious, desperate love, but Drew could follow its warped path. He understood the impulse to protect one's family at all costs, it was an impulse he shared. But the cost, in this case, had been the truth and his own peace of mind. So you decided to just live with it? Drew asked, a hard edge entering his voice for the first time. To let me live with a mystery, to let everyone live a lie? Do you have any idea what that does to a person, Willow? To not know who wanted you dead? I know it was selfish. I know it was wrong, she sobbed. But I was trapped. Every day that passed, it became harder to say anything. The lie just grew and grew until it felt like it was suffocating me. That's why I'm telling you now. I can't carry it anymore. The weight of it is going to crush me. She leaned forward, her body language a portrait of utter desperation. This was it. This was the moment her life would irrevocably shatter. But she had one last, desperate card to play. A terrible, unforgivable idea that had taken root in her mind during her countless sleepless nights, a poisonous seed planted by her own terror. Drew, she whispered, her eyes wide and imploring, there might be a way. A way out of this for everyone. A way where no one gets hurt. Drew watched her warily. The shift in her tone was alarming. The guilt-ridden confession was morphing into something else, something strategic and dangerous. What are you talking about, Willow? A way out? There is no way out of this. You shot me. I know I did, she said quickly, her words tumbling over one another. But, what if it wasn't me? What if we could blame someone else? Someone that no one would miss. Someone who deserves to pay for something. A cold chill ran down Drew's spine. He could scarcely believe what he was hearing. Willow, what are you suggesting? She took another ragged breath, her gaze intense, almost feverish. Nina Reeves. The name dropped into the room like a lead weight. Drew stared at her, utterly stunned into silence. Of all the names she could have said, this was perhaps the most shocking, and yet, in the convoluted dynamics of Port Charles, it almost made a twisted kind of sense. Nina, he finally echoed, his voice flat with disbelief. You want to blame Nina? Think about it, Drew. Willow pleaded, a frantic energy overtaking her. She's caused nothing but pain for our family. She lied to Michael and Wiley for months about being Wiley's grandmother. She's the reason Drew Kane, the other Drew, is gone. She betrayed Sunny, she betrayed Carly, she's a vortex of chaos and destruction. The town already thinks she's capable of anything. They would believe it. Drew listened, aghast, as Willow laid out her monstrous proposal. It was a testament to her sheer desperation that she could even conceive of such a plan. She was no longer the victim of a tragic accident, she was actively plotting to frame an innocent woman for her crime. She was there that night, Willow continued, her mind racing ahead, building the flimsy scaffold of her lie. It was chaotic. The police could be made to believe that she was the one who fired the shot. Maybe she was aiming for Carly or Michael because of her vendetta against our family, and you just got in the way. It's plausible. People would believe it. Willow, stop it, Drew said, his voice firm and laced with a rising anger that was no longer directed just at the shooting, but at this new, horrifying suggestion. Just stop. This is insane. I am not going to help you frame Nina Reeves for something she didn't do. But she deserves it. Willow insisted, her tears now those of frustration as much as guilt. In a way, she's responsible for all of this. Her lies, her manipulations, they created the atmosphere of tension and fear that led to that night. If she hadn't been so toxic, maybe I wouldn't have been so on edge, maybe I wouldn't have been holding that gun, maybe none of this would have happened. She's not innocent, Drew. She's guilty of so much else. This would just be cosmic justice. Drew stood up, unable to remain seated. He paced a few steps away from her, trying to process the moral abyss that had just opened up in his living room. He had faced enemies who were straightforward in their evil. This was different. This was corruption born from love and fear, which made it all the more disturbing. There is no such thing as cosmic justice, Willow, he said, turning to face her. His expression was a mixture of pity and stern disappointment. There is only justice. And justice doesn't work by pinning your crimes on someone you dislike. What you're suggesting is not a solution, it's another, potentially worse, crime. It's cowardly and it's wrong. I am a coward! Willow cried, jumping to her feet. I'm terrified. I don't want to lose my children. I don't want to lose my husband. I don't want to go to prison for a mistake. Can't you understand that? You're a father. What wouldn't you do to protect Scout? The mention of his daughter hit its mark, and Drew flinched. He would move heaven and earth for Scout. He would lie, cheat, steal, even kill to keep her safe. He understood the primal drive. But he also understood where the line was, the line that separated protection from damnation. I would do a lot for Scout, he admitted, his voice quiet but firm. But I would not destroy an innocent person's life to save my own. I would not become the kind of monster I would want to protect her from. If I did that, Willow, I wouldn't be worthy of being her father. And if you do this, you won't be worthy of being Wiley and Amelia's mother. His words struck Willow with the force of a physical blow. She staggered back a step, as if he had slapped her. The truth of his statement was undeniable, and it carved through her desperation like a scalpel. What choice do I have? She whispered, her defiance crumbling, leaving only the raw, broken woman beneath. If I confess, I lose everything. If I don't, I live like this, a ghost in my own life, and you live with a lie. There are no good choices here, Drew. The only choice is the truth, Drew said, his tone softening slightly. He could see her agony, her utter brokenness. The anger he felt was still there, a hot coal in his gut, but it was now mixed with a profound sadness. It's the hardest choice, but it's the only one that doesn't poison everything it touches. You have to take responsibility for what you did. And then what? Willow asked, her voice hollow. I go to the police? I go to trial? I become a headline? ELQ heiress shoots company head in botched attack? It will destroy Michael. It will destroy our family. Drew walked back toward her, stopping a few feet away. He was silent for a long time, weighing his own feelings, his own sense of betrayal, against the bigger picture of the family they both loved. I need time to process this, Willow, he said finally. What you did, the shooting, I can maybe understand as a panic-induced accident. But the cover-up? And this scheme to blame Nina? That's harder to forgive. Willow hung her head, fresh tears falling to the expensive rug beneath their feet. She had laid her soul bare, and the judgment she feared was now staring her in the face. But, Drew continued, the word hanging in the air, a tiny lifeline. You are family. You're the mother of my nephew and niece. You're Michael's wife. And despite everything, I believe you when you say it was an accident. He took a deep breath, making a decision that would alter all of their futures. I'm not going to the police. Not right now. Willow's head snapped up, a flicker of impossible hope in her red-ridden eyes. You're not. No, Drew said. But this secret doesn't belong to just you and me anymore. It's too big. The first step, the only step, is that you have to tell Michael. The flicker of hope in Willow's eyes was instantly extinguished, replaced by a new, even more profound terror. Telling Drew was one thing, he was stable, reasonable, and despite his anger, inherently fair. Telling Michael, her husband, the man whose world she had vowed to protect, that was an entirely different level of fear. Michael, she breathed, her voice barely a whisper. I can't. Drew, you don't understand. He'll look at me differently. He'll never see me the same way again. The trust, it will be gone. It's already gone, Willow, Drew said, not unkindly. You've been lying to him for weeks. The only chance you have of rebuilding that trust is by telling him the truth yourself. He deserves to know. He's been living with this mystery, too, worrying about who tried to kill his uncle, his business partner, his friend. He deserves to know it was his wife, and he deserves to hear it from you. The logic was inescapable. The path Drew was outlining was narrow, painful, and fraught with peril, but it was the only path that led back toward the light. The alternative was a descent into a deeper, darker deception that would ultimately consume them all. When? Willow asked, her shoulders slumping in defeat. The fight had gone out of her. She knew he was right. Today, Drew said firmly. There can't be any more delays. You call him. You tell him you need to talk. And you tell him everything. Just like you told me. And then, we'll figure out what happens next. As a family. The word family had never sounded so heavy, so fragile. Willow simply nodded, unable to speak. She had come to Drew's home hoping for absolution, or at least for a partner in a terrible conspiracy. Instead, she had been given a path to redemption that felt like a death sentence for her marriage. As Drew showed her to the door, the atmosphere in the room had changed. The dreadful anticipation was gone, replaced by the grim certainty of the difficult days to come. Willow stepped out into the sunlight, but it offered no warmth. She felt more alone than she ever had in her life, carrying the weight of a truth that was about to detonate like a bomb at the center of her world. The confession was over, but the consequences were only just beginning. The next conversation, the one with Michael, would be the true test. It would determine whether the Corinthos family could survive the truth, or if the bullet Willow fired that night at the Metro Court would, weeks later, finally achieve its destructive purpose, shattering the very foundation of the family she had been trying to protect. The spoilers for Port Charles were clear, a marriage hung in the balance, a friendship was fractured, and the shadow of one desperate woman's secret was about to fall over everyone she loved. The fallout would be swift, and it would be merciless. Nathan West's death was one of the most heartbreaking moments in Port Charles history, shaking fans and characters alike to their core. The heroic detective, who was beloved not only by his wife Maxie Jones but by his colleagues at the PCPD and friends across town, was gunned down in what everyone believed was a tragic and fatal confrontation with his dangerous father, Caesar Faison. The grief was overwhelming. Maxie was left a widow, forced to raise their son James without his father. Nina Reeves lost her brother, and the entire community mourned the loss of one of its brightest, most noble protectors. Over the years, Nathan's death remained a scar on those closest to him, shaping their lives in ways they never could have imagined. But now, shocking new revelations suggest that everything they thought they knew was a lie. The truth is finally coming to light, and it's more explosive than anyone could have ever anticipated. Nathan West didn't actually die that fateful day, and the mastermind behind the elaborate cover-up is none other than Jordan Ashford. The reasons behind such a twisted deception are complex, layered with secrets, betrayals, and motives that intertwine with years of Port Charles history. To understand why Nathan's death was faked, one must first return to that infamous confrontation with Faison. Everyone remembers how Faison targeted Nathan, how he manipulated Peter August into being part of his sinister schemes, and how the situation spiraled into chaos. Nathan was shot in front of his loved ones, rushed to General Hospital, and later succumbed to his injuries. At least, that's what the world believed. But in reality, Jordan was already several steps ahead. As police commissioner at the time, Jordan had access to every piece of evidence, every medical report, and every detail of the case. She quietly ensured that the narrative matched what everyone expected to see. But behind closed doors, she orchestrated a daring plan to spirit Nathan away, putting him into hiding and forcing him to sever all ties with the life he knew. The question that now burns in the minds of everyone in Port Charles is simple: why? Why would Jordan, a woman dedicated to law enforcement and justice, go to such lengths to fake the death of one of her most trusted detectives? The answer is rooted in the dangers Nathan faced and the secrets Jordan was desperate to protect. Faison's reach was vast, and even after his death, the remnants of his network posed a serious threat to Nathan and anyone connected to him. Jordan discovered intelligence that revealed a plot larger than anyone realized. Faison's allies were still out there, hunting Nathan, determined to wipe him out because of information he had uncovered during his investigations. By allowing the world to think Nathan was dead, Jordan believed she was saving his life and keeping his loved ones safe from reprisal. It was the ultimate sacrifice, forcing Nathan into exile, stripping him of his identity, and making everyone he cared about grieve a loss that wasn't real. But Jordan's decision wasn't as selfless as it might first appear. Over time, it has become clear that she had her own motives for keeping this explosive secret under wraps. Her career, her alliances, and her sense of control were all tied up in the outcome. If word had ever gotten out that Nathan was alive, it would have exposed Jordan to accusations of corruption, manipulation, and betrayal. She risked everything to maintain the ruse, and as the years passed, the weight of the deception grew heavier. She watched Maxie mourn, watched Nina collapse under the grief of losing her brother, and watched James grow up without a father. And yet, she stayed silent. The guilt gnawed at her, but she convinced herself it was for the greater good. In her mind, sparing Nathan from the wrath of Faison's remnants justified the cruel lie. Now, however, the walls are closing in. Evidence has surfaced that Nathan never truly died in that hospital bed, and whispers around Port Charles are growing louder. Maxie, who has struggled for years to move forward, is suddenly faced with hints that her husband might still be alive. Nina, who has long carried the pain of losing Nathan, is beginning to demand answers. And Jordan can no longer keep the truth buried. When the bombshell drops that Nathan faked his death under Jordan's orders, the fallout is guaranteed to be seismic. Friends will feel betrayed, enemies will seize the opportunity to exploit the chaos, and Nathan himself will be thrust into a world that has moved on without him. For Nathan, returning from the shadows will be nothing short of agonizing. He has lived with the knowledge that his wife and child believed him gone, that his sister cried herself to sleep countless nights, and that his colleagues honored his memory without knowing the truth. He will have to face the anger and heartbreak of those he left behind, particularly Maxie, who built a life for herself under the assumption that he was never coming back. For Maxie, the revelation will be devastating. She mourned Nathan deeply, gave birth to their child while drowning in grief, and tried to rebuild her life brick by brick. The betrayal of discovering that Nathan was alive all this time, that Jordan helped orchestrate his disappearance, will ignite fury and confusion like nothing she has ever experienced. Her love for Nathan may still burn brightly, but her trust has been shattered. As for Jordan, her carefully constructed image as a leader and protector will crumble under the weight of the truth. She may insist that she acted to save Nathan's life, but many in Port Charles will see it as an abuse of power and a betrayal of the people she was supposed to serve. Curtis, her ex-husband, will struggle to reconcile the woman he once loved with the choices she made. Her colleagues at the PCPD will question her integrity, and she may find herself alienated from the very community she swore to protect. Jordan's role in the deception may have started as a desperate attempt to shield Nathan, but in the end, it will mark her legacy in ways she never intended. The drama doesn't end with personal betrayals. Nathan's survival and Jordan's involvement will ripple out into larger storylines, dragging others into the storm. Peter August, who spent years grappling with his connection to Faison and his role in Nathan's supposed death, will be forced to confront new truths about his own past actions. Liesl Albrecht, who always carried guilt for her connection to Faison and her treatment of Nathan, will face a whirlwind of emotions. Even Anna Devane, whose history with Faison remains one of her most complicated burdens, will be pulled back into the web of secrets and lies. The revelation that Nathan faked his death under Jordan's command ties back to years of unfinished business, reigniting rivalries and resurrecting dangers that many believed were finally buried. The storm in Port Charles only intensifies as word begins to spread that Nathan's death was staged. Rumors are first whispered in back alleys and quiet corners, exchanged between those who stumble upon fragments of truth. An anonymous tip surfaces, claiming that Nathan was transported out of General Hospital under heavy guard the night he supposedly passed away. A nurse, long since retired, recalls seeing Jordan in hushed conversation with a group of men she didn't recognize, their presence suspicious in the chaos of the emergency. When these details reach the ears of investigative minds like Sam McCall and Damian Spinelli, the hunt for answers begins in earnest. Spinelli, ever loyal to Maxie and determined to uncover the truth, throws himself into digging through records, tracing unexplained expenditures, and pulling surveillance footage long buried in police files. The deeper he digs, the more undeniable the evidence becomes. Nathan never left the hospital in a body bag, but rather, under Jordan's careful orchestration, he vanished into thin air. As suspicions mount, Maxie feels her world spin out of control. She has spent years working tirelessly to move forward, but the suggestion that Nathan might still be alive cracks open wounds she thought had scarred over. She clings to James, terrified of what this revelation might mean for their family. On one hand, hope surges in her heart. If Nathan is alive, it means James can finally know his father, and she can be reunited with the man she has loved more than anyone. On the other hand, anger simmers beneath the surface. Why would Nathan allow her to grieve? Why would he put her through such torment without so much as a sign that he was alive? As Spinelli shares his findings with her, Maxie vacillates between desperate hope and seething betrayal. It isn't until she confronts Jordan directly that the truth begins to spill out. Jordan, cornered and unable to dodge the mounting questions, admits to her involvement in faking Nathan's death. She explains her motives with a mix of guilt and determination. She insists she acted to save Nathan from certain doom, that Faison's men had targeted him relentlessly and that the only way to keep him safe was to make the world believe he no longer existed. She swears she never intended to cause Maxie or Nina such pain, but that revealing the truth at the time would have jeopardized everyone's lives. Her voice trembles as she describes the threat Faison's network posed, painting a picture of shadows still lurking, waiting for an opportunity to strike. But her words offer little comfort to Maxie. To Maxie, all she hears is that Jordan played God with her life, stripping her of the chance to fight for her husband and condemning her to years of unnecessary grief. Nina's reaction is no less explosive. Having finally found stability with Valentine and carved out a new chapter of her life, Nina is thrust back into anguish. She remembers every tear she shed for her brother, every time she sat by his grave and spoke to him as though he could hear her. The realization that all of it was built on a lie pushes her into a rage unlike anything Port Charles has seen from her before. She storms into Jordan's office at the PCPD, hurling accusations and demanding justice. For Nina, Jordan's betrayal isn't just professional, it's deeply personal. Nathan was her family, the only true blood connection she had for so long, and Jordan robbed her of years she could have spent by his side. Her anger consumes her, and she vows to hold Jordan accountable no matter what excuses are offered. Meanwhile, the question of where Nathan has been all this time becomes the next mystery to unravel. Jordan confesses that she arranged for Nathan to be taken into a witness protection-like program overseen not by the federal government but by shadow contacts she had cultivated over her years in law enforcement. Nathan was given a new identity, relocated far from Port Charles, and sworn to secrecy under threat of deadly consequences if he ever broke cover. For Nathan, the isolation was torturous. He lived each day haunted by the memories of Maxie and James, aching to return but shackled by the knowledge that doing so would endanger them all. The psychological toll of pretending to be someone else, of living in the shadows while the people he loved mourned him, carved deep scars into his spirit. Though he clung to Jordan's assurances that this was the only way, a part of him resented her for the choice she forced upon him. When Nathan finally re-emerges in Port Charles, the reunion is nothing like the joyous, heartwarming scenes he dreamed of during his exile. His first encounter with Maxie is raw and brutal, filled with tears, shouting, and silence that says more than words ever could. Maxie hurls accusations at him, demanding to know how he could let her suffer, how he could miss the birth of their son, and how he could live with himself while she endured such agony. Nathan, in turn, pleads with her to understand, explaining that every day away from her and James was its own form of punishment, that he longed to return but was bound by Jordan's orders and the threat to their lives. Their love, once unshakable, is now burdened by mistrust and pain. Though the spark between them is undeniable, Maxie struggles to see how she can ever forgive the choices that were made. Nina, on the other hand, throws herself into rebuilding her bond with her brother. Despite her fury at Jordan, she welcomes Nathan back with open arms, desperate to make up for lost time. Their reunion is bittersweet, laced with joy but also grief for the years that can never be reclaimed. Nina clings to Nathan, vowing to never let him slip away from her again. But even as she celebrates his return, she cannot ignore the damage Jordan has done. She begins rallying allies to ensure Jordan pays the price for her manipulation. Valentine supports her, using his influence to dig into Jordan's decisions, while Liesl Albrecht, long obsessed with family loyalty, joins Nina in her crusade. Jordan finds herself surrounded by enemies, her every move scrutinized and her future at the PCPD hanging by a thread. The ripple effect spreads even further. Curtis, who once believed Jordan to be a woman of integrity, struggles with his own feelings of betrayal. He confronts her privately, torn between his lingering affection and his outrage at her actions. He reminds her of the countless times she accused others of corruption, only for her to turn around and commit one of the greatest deceptions in Port Charles history. Their conversation is laced with bitterness, regret, and unresolved emotion, leaving Curtis questioning whether he ever truly knew the woman he once loved. For Jordan, it is yet another relationship fractured by the choices she made years ago. But Jordan is not the only one facing consequences. With Nathan's survival revealed, old enemies resurface. Faison may be dead, but his allies are not. Word spreads quickly in the underworld that Nathan is alive, and soon he becomes the target of a new wave of threats. This time, the danger isn't confined to him alone. Maxie, James, Nina, and everyone close to Nathan find themselves in the crosshairs. Jordan's warnings about the danger were not unfounded, and as attacks begin to escalate, the people of Port Charles are forced to unite to protect one of their own. The truth is out, but the danger is greater than ever, setting the stage for explosive confrontations that will test loyalties, shatter bonds, and force Nathan to decide once and for all whether his return to Port Charles was worth the cost.